Good evening. Welcome to the Billy Wilder Theater, home of the UCLA Film and Television Archives, public programs. I'm May Home HaDuong. You can call me May. I am the Archives Director, and it is a pleasure to welcome you to the Restoration World premiere of Lisa Cholodenko's High Art. Woo! Preservation can take a village, involving detective work, advocacy, and collaboration that transcends any single individual or archive. The process requires meticulous inspection, exacting technical work, urgent calls to labs and filmmakers, partnerships with distributors and families to locate sometimes near lost elements. Our journey tonight began with a phone call from Marcus Hu of Strand Releasing, who emphatically declared to me, "We need to restore high art." Where is Marcus? He's way back. What? You're way back there. Okay. Having known Marcus for over 2 decades now, I think we figured out. I understood when he said "we," he meant we, and he also meant we, because strap in, we're going for a ride, right? I think we had this phone call on a rainy day, maybe 9 months or 10 months ago. Restorations sometimes take years. This was at a different kind of pace. For a film made over 25 years ago, high art, a gorgeous and groundbreaking queer film, was challenging to access. Marcus's call led to a flurry of emails and meetings, mirroring the collaborative spirit of independent filmmaking. This team effort secured funding from the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, Antidote Films, Frameline, Strand Releasing, Sundance Institute, and the UCLA Film and Television Archive. Restoration work began earlier this year. Roundabout Entertainment scanned the original picture negative in 4K, used digital restoration software to remove dirt and wear, and then, with final approval with the filmmaker, Lisa Cholodenko, and producer Jeffrey Kusama-Hinte, the picture was color corrected to match the originally intended look of the film. The sound was restored from the original edited elements by Red Hook Post. Restoration sessions were the UCLA Film and Television Archives, Jillian Borders, and Academy Film Archives, Cassie Blake, were there as part of the process, and Marcus and Jeffrey were leading the charge. I want to thank all of those already mentioned, as well as the Archives Motion Picture Curator Todd Weiner, the Academy's Executive Vice President of Collection and Preservation Matt Severson, the Academy Film Archives Director Mike Pogorzelski, Frameline's Executive Director Allegra Madsen, Sundance's John Nein, and Roundabout Entertainment's Vincent Perozzi and Greg Garvin. I said it took a village, so here we are. This free screening was made possible by an anonymous donor, with the Hammer Museum as our ongoing partner, along with support from the Robert Gore Rifkin Foundation Queer Screening Endowment and Andrew Day King Jr. Foundation. Thank you to Max Rifkin Barron and Frederick Green, who are here tonight, who joined us. Thanks for their support. I got an email, I think a few months ago, when we were doing a Queer Rhapsody series, and I was telling somebody this earlier, and they wrote and they said, "Why are you obsessed with homosexuality?" I think Max and Frederick are, as well as many of us, and they make all of that happen, as well as you here tonight. We're grateful to also our queer community partners, Magic Hour, Queer Film Los Angeles, Sapphic LA, and the UCLA LGBTQ Campus Resource Center. Queer film started here 40 years ago at UCLA. Over 40 years ago, Outfest was founded here, and there were a lot of folks involved in that, including Bob Rosen, who just passed away. The work of preserving and championing and talking about independent cinema and queer cinema, I stand on those shoulders of Bob, and really just excited that you all made it here. So I want to thank the community partners, the staff here, theater manager Lauren Brown, digital lab staff, projectionist Alex Blevins, the Hammer AV team, and the student theater staff. Finally, I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. I know that being here means that you perhaps gave up an evening of baseball, football, or basketball, or all three, plus some sort of light show. I have no idea. It's the World Series of Queer Film here tonight, so whatever. And you maybe sat through some traffic, but you're here to see an incredibly meaningful and beautiful film and its restoration. So let's give all of those individuals and yourself a round of applause. So before the screening, you may have enjoyed a remixed score of High Art by composer Craig Wedren. If you missed it, you can visit our event page at our website for a link to the score, which goes to SoundCloud. It's also bit.ly/highArtRemix, the remix to High Art. So please check that out, and thank you, Craig, so much for putting that together. Craig will join other guests from the film in a Q&A moderated by Kim Yutani, Director of Programming at Sundance, and so you should stay after the film for that. Now, to introduce the film's director, Lisa Cholodenko, we are joined by John Nein, Senior Programmer and Director of Strategic Initiatives at the Sundance Institute, our partners in tonight's program. Since 1997, the UCLA Film and Television Archive and Sundance have collaborated to conserve independent films and ensuring the safety of countless elements, and we restored 16 films together, including tonight's film. Please join me in welcoming John Nein to the stage.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm going to try to be brief because I'm way more excited to see the restored version of High Art than I am to hear me talking about it. It's hard to be brief about this film because it's a film that I have loved ever since seeing it make its world premiere at Sundance in 1998. It is a film, I remember walking out of the screening and thinking it's only January and I have already seen the best film that I'll see this year. It is a film that has stayed with me and had a very lasting effect on me all these years. Before I say something about the film, though, I do want to say something about the restored version or the notion of restoration. As May said, we've had a film preservation initiative for many years with UCLA. More than 25, and I've been there for most of that, and in that time I have seen just about every possible bad thing that can happen to an independent film. Lost negative, damaged negative, stored in closet under bed, legal disputes, defunct distributors, films that are stuck in rights oblivion or bankruptcy litigation. We're dealing with so many films that have these issues that take a time to work out if we can't even find the negative. And it's heartbreaking because these are the films that, have fueled the independent film movement that has given us so much. So you cannot even take for granted that a film that is only 25 years old is around to screen. Thankfully, this is. And in fact, we did screen High Art at Sundance a few years ago, just before the pandemic. It was an HD transfer. And I remember saying, Marcus must have been there, we need to restore the High Art. And so I think it's amazing that we're here today to see a restored version. You're the first audience to see that, and one of the reasons that is so cool is because one of the things that is so amazing about this film is its aesthetic. It has a spare, layered, textured, intimate aesthetic. It has incredible production design, Tammy Riker's beautiful cinematography, Jojo Whilden's still photography, a phenomenal score. There are so many things here that I think, that I'm excited to see brought out in this. For me, High Art represents everything that was energizing and inspiring and culture shifting about independent film in the 1990s. It was a time where the boldness of new voices was exploding onto the scene, telling stories authentically, and reflecting onto the screen the people and experiences that were very underrepresented in mainstream cinema. This was a groundbreaking, beloved part of the evolving story of new queer cinema. And for me, this was just one of the most beautiful, intimate, aching love stories that I had seen. and was driven by that sense of authenticity, by this kind of beautiful, sublimated intensity that you'll feel throughout the entire film. It's a story about these New York subcultures, about love, about drug addiction, about ambition, about that eternal tug between art and commerce. And this is a filmmaker who deeply understood these characters and their behavior and their complex, contradictory emotions and psychologies. And I think that's all part of what makes this, such a rich film. It was also a time when indie film was breaking talent. And here's where you see Radha Mitchell, who had been in, I think 1 or 2 small roles. Patty Clarkson, who to this day says that she owes her career to high art. Ali Sheedy, who certainly had a career, but saw it redefined by this role. It was not easy to make an independent film at that time. It still isn't now. But I do love that we're looking back at this time from a time when it still is. There are huge challenges to making independent film. But I take heart in the fact that repertory cinema is thriving all across the country. And so I want to encourage you all to talk about this. I know that Strand is going to be releasing this next year in the spring. So please talk about it, and hopefully we'll celebrate the history of independent film. One of the best things that High Art did is launch a career. Lisa Cholodenko grew up here, well, not here in this building, but here in the San Fernando Valley. Her career started as an assistant editor on John Singleton's Boys in the Hood. She then headed to a place where indie film was thriving, New York, where she earned her MFA in writing and directing at Columbia University. Very shortly after that, went into production on her first feature. It not only premiered at Sundance, but it won the Waldo Screenwriting Award. It was acquired by October Films. It racked up 6 Indie Spirit Award nominations, and it won several awards for Ali Sheedy, including Best Actress from both the LA and New York Critics Societies. Her second feature, Laurel Canyon, premiered in Directors Fortnight at the Cannes Film Festival, notably starring pre-Batman Christian Bale and Frances McDormand in leather. That was Lisa's joke. We're going to give her credit. Her third feature, Kids Are All Right, was released in 2010. It earned 4 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture and Original Screenplay, and it also won the Golden Globe for Best Picture. She's worked extensively in television as well, directing HBO's limited series Olive Kitteridge, which won the DGA Award and the Emmy Award for directing. It is an honor to introduce the writer-director of High Art, Lisa Cholodenko.
Oh my God, who's that person? I'm so moved. Thank you, John. Thank you so much for coming out. I was going to say what May said, which is I know it's the first night of the World Series. So I thank you so much, especially Phil Hay for making the schlep, because go Dodgers. So thank you. I'm moved. I want to thank UCLA for hosting a beautiful evening for us and having us here at the Hammer. As well, UCLA and others, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences and Sundance and Frameline and others, but major players in putting this restoration together and making this happen for a re-release. I also want to thank Marcus Hugh for everything you've given to this, and Jeff Kusama-Hinte for coming together with Marcus and really spearheading this restoration re-release project and getting this film here tonight. It was a lot of pieces, like John said, and in gratitude for that. High Art, it was a labor of love at the time. Now I learned tonight that it's over 25 years ago. And looking back, I'm just kind of astonished that we were able to make it. It was just a labor of love and very fortuitous for me. I was still in film school. I wrote a script that I loved, and I happened to meet Jeff Kusama-Hinte, who was Jeff Levy-Hinte at the time, and we, he leaned in, and we got to make a movie. And I'm just grateful for everyone who gave their passion and their energy to it, and some of whom are here, and you'll meet them after. But lots of talent. Anyway, I hope you'll enjoy it on the second time. You'll enjoy it again, and we'll come up there and talk about it after. So thank you for being here tonight.
So thank you for sticking around. I want to reintroduce to you the writer, director of High Art. Please welcome back Lisa Cholodenko. We also have some other of the team here with us. I want to bring up editor Amy Duddleston. Also, producer Jeffrey Kusama-Hinte. Producer Susan Stover. Composer Craig Wedren. And last but not least, photographer Jojo Whilden. It's a lot of people on stage. We'll talk for a little bit, and then we'll open it up to the audience in a bit. But I just want to say congratulations. I mean, it is incredible to see this film now, and it holds up completely. It is just incredible to see this in this pristine state. Just as I saw it 25 years ago. I mean, I think John did such a wonderful introduction of the film, and there's just so much of the film that resonates now, I think. I'm wondering if I may be so bold as to ask all of you sort of how you feel seeing this film after so many years. We can start from Jojo. How about?
Yes. Does this need? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I still love this film, and I just think there's not one wasted word and not one wasted scene. It's just, to me, it's pitch perfect. I still love it, and it's nice to be able to hear it better with the new sound mix. Yeah.
So close and yet so far from that time in our lives, and still aesthetically still there in so many ways. I was thinking, right now I'm deep in the middle of doing music for season 3 of Yellow Jackets, and I'm like, oh, it's wine glasses and freaky beats and female voice. Nothing has changed.
Well, I guess I'm kind of echoing what everyone said. It's kind of, I don't want to sound immodest, but it is a beautiful film, and it's very resonating, and it's definitely held up over time. The humor is hilarious. Patty Clarkson always blows me away.
Patty.
It's kind of insane. Yeah, no, it was great, and the sound remix was incredible. I mean, you and Tom did an amazing job on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I certainly echo everything you're saying. And, it's odd for me because I've been working on the post of it, so I didn't get the chance actually to see it finished because I've seen it so many times over and over again. So I actually envy people who can see it so for the first time again. But I think for me, it's like the entire film sort of comes into brighter focus and to more present. Like it's exactly the same film, frame by frame by frame, but yet the whole thing just feels so much more present and intense. And still to this screening, I'm still seeing things I've never seen before, and I've seen it 50 times. I mean, no doubt. Maybe I'm just
More than 50.
Maybe I'm slow. I'm just catching up. But it's just the subtlety, the expression, of course, and the writing, but just all these elements come together, the rhythms that were created. So yeah, it's a real privilege to have made it, and a real privilege to have been able to have worked on it again and to bring it back to an audience. Yeah.
Yes.
I just look at this movie and I'm like, I did that. It's like, we did that. It's like, it's just
And we were children at the time.
like children.
Yeah,
Like
we
I was, I mean, and this is like one of my favorite things I've ever worked on. And so just to see it like this is incredible. And to see it with people 25 years later in a theater like this, it's like astounding to me. So thank you all for coming. It's just, it's, yeah.
I really echo everything everybody's said. Our wonderful decorator is sitting in the audience, so I'm giving a shout out to Karen Marcus.
Karen Marcus.
And Elaine. Is Elaine here?
I think she left.
Lainey, she was in the movie. Lane say, see. It was, it's kind of overwhelming to see it again after all this time. And, there's a lot I could say about it, but what I will say tonight is I looked at it through the lens of everybody that's here that worked on it, and I'm in such gratitude for what everybody brought to it. It felt so handmade to me and crafted, and like everybody's sort of singular talent was put in it. And it really was a labor of love, and we were young, and we were just, it was hard work, but there was a kind of like a passion and a can-do, and it's very moving to me to see it all these years later, having been in the film business now for a long time, and it's never been that free and that much love put into the project. I've never had that experience again, so I'm so glad we did this. I'm really grateful, and I'm so glad other people can enjoy it, see it again. Thank you.
I wanted to ask you about the script. I did not realize that you wrote this while you were still at Columbia. It is like there's just so much in this script, and the characters are so distinctive. Like these are characters that I have remembered, so vividly all these years. I mean. Can you think back to when you were writing this? What was the spark? Yeah, what was happening?
It's a very specific, thing. When I am from here, and I moved to New York to go to film school, and it's like bright lights, big city kind of thing. And I met a lot of people that lived downtown, and it was a certain era of, sort of heroin chic and those things. And we knew people that were living like that. And they were friends, and some weren't friends. But I kind of felt like Sid, It was sort of like, wow, I was just sort of tripping into something that I hadn't been exposed to before. And so I could really put myself into her shoes in a way. And then, the other story, the more economic story, is I kind of rolled the die on myself and said I'll put myself through film school, and it was really expensive. So I worked, really hard to be able to make a film that I could, write a film that I could get made and start a career. So I worked really hard on it, and for many years, and I was kind of just workshopping it for years up at Columbia. And then I met Jeff, I met Susan, and I met other people along the way, and it was kind of follow the yellow brick road. So, but I'm a firm believer in when you feel like you have something that is worth chiseling away at, like just to keep going and going and going until it reveals itself. And that was this one for me.
Anything that you guys want to add, Susan and Jeff?
I would say one thing that this film reflects is we were completely uncorrupted by money because we had none.
Yes.
And I think that goes to the freedom element. There was literally nobody to tell us what to do. And there was no constraint except for Lisa's artistic vision and then the constraint to the money. But then oddly, really it's Susan's genius, who was really the only person that had any experience in production in the producerial side. I mean, we'll put that to the side. And able to bring together a crew and with a focus and a dedication. And when you look at us, it really is like looking at a high school photograph.
Yeah.
Like, it's unbelievable that we're threaded the camera and exposed the film correctly, and yet then then made this beautiful piece, you know.
Right, right. I mean, I was struck with what Lisa, the handmadeness, but not handmade, but the craftsman, the artisan, that's really strong in there, and it is. It's not just in every frame, it's in every corner of the frame. The things, how carefully everything was put together. One thing that just if you're talking about production for a minute, how much more difficult it was to shoot on film. Not only in just the cost and making sure that you had enough film to get through the day, but I started thinking about how we had to schedule this film because we had to get Jojo's photographs that would play throughout. So it kind of forced us to have the sex scene first. And I remember, Lisa, you were like, do we have to do it this way? Do we have to do it this way? And this is before, you could put your little green corners up on the frames and throw it in and post. So I was like, yeah, we actually have to, but you know what? It's good. It'll be awkward, and it will be awkward, and they would play more naturally. I remember just trying to give you some sort of sell on that, but it was a real challenge. I mean, I remember you're shooting in New York City. It was in August and July. It's not the most comfortable time of the year, but it was. I guess what I'm trying to say, there was a lot of passion behind your passion and our passion for your vision. It got us through it. So I thank you for the opportunity, Lisa.
Hear, hear.
We live to tell the tale.
Yeah, we live to tell it.
Yes.
We're still alive to tell it.
Speaking of Jojo's work in the film, it is plays such a significant role. I'm curious about the creative collaboration that you and Lisa had as before and as this film was being shot.
What do we have, Lisa? Lisa and I have known each other a long time. We went to San Francisco State together, and I read early drafts of this film and had ideas of the photography and the context, and we talked about it a lot. And then I was also a graduate student at NYU at the same time, so I would come to set when actual production started. I absolutely knew nothing about film production and thought I was like a big photographer diva and would be like, what the hell's going on? When do I get to take my picture? But I learned, and but I would come into the set and have to get these pictures, and I don't know what happened with the sex scene, what you guys were just talking about, but it was awkward.
It was
awkward. It was yeah.
Forced to be in the early.
Yeah, I think everyone knew that but me, but it's fine. But I had to then go take the film to the lab, get it developed, and then I would go use the dark rooms at NYU and print all the photos and rush them back to set. It was great. It was so fun. And I was a perfectionist, so I would make like 50 prints per image and show them all, like, which one do you like? Yeah. So, it was just... everyone was very on board with the photography because it was such a big, important part of the characterization, and I was also had a part-time job working as a photo editor at the time, and knew a lot of photographers. So I brought in other photographers to populate the frame office, and the frame covers. So it was all in from the beginning.
And Lisa, did you have an idea in your head how you wanted the photos to look? And
Yeah, I mean, there was certain, kind of a style of photography that was going on at the time, and people referenced Nan Golden a lot, but there was a sort of like, like the Boston School, I guess you could call it, and there was other people that came up around her that had a similar aesthetic, which was kind of, that very stark, let's photograph our friends and it's not beautiful, it's like real kind of thing. But it is beautiful because it's, there's something artful and whatever about the way it was done. So Jojo and I talked a lot about that, and I was kidding with her earlier, and I said, remember those conversations? And you said to me, well, I'm not imitating Nan Golden, so let's figure out something else. So we had a lot of really good conversations, and I was grateful that she was she was bold enough just to be like, I got it. I got like the aesthetic, I got the time, I got the world, but we're going to go our own way here. And of course, this is, in the spirit of that, but this isn't that. I just felt incredibly fortunate that I had a really old dear friend that could pull that weight, and we could do that together. It felt very do it together like.
Craig, Shudder to Think was pretty much my friends and my favorite band of the 90s.
Yay, thank you.
So it was such a thrill to hear your work in this film, and it also plays such a a character of its own. The moment the movie begins, it's like the glass. I was curious how you made that kind of leap from doing the Discord kind of
So-
years to this work.
Throughout the 90s, for people who don't know, I was in a band called Shudder to Think, and we started in the DC hardcore scene and then became film composers. So this was, I think, our second movie. Is Tracy McKnight here? Tracy? She thought she was going to come, but she's the music supervisor on this, and I guess she brought us in. We were film nerds. We were super sick of the road and of each other, and we knew that we wanted to start composing music for film. We did Jesse Peretz's first movie, First Love, Last Rites, the same year, and I think we were probably hanging around post 391. Right, which was Jeff's editing facility. And it was really like a little clubhouse for New York indie weirdos. And I don't know if that's how we got involved. I really don't remember, but we met Lisa. First we got a VHS of a cut of the movie with no music, zero, which never would happen today. You'll always get a cut with pre-existing temp music throughout. And so we just watch. I mean, it's already such a spare, crystal kind of a hypnotic silence in this movie. And while we were watching it, I was just like, wine glasses. And I went back home, and we were literally composing it like on our little keyboards on our lap. We had no idea how to make music for a movie. And I remember we were just like, it was sort of like Hudsucker Proxy, where he's like, for kids. And it turns out to be a hula hoop. We're like, wine glasses, right? And then we played it for you, and you were like, yeah, that's really fucking cool. And trip hop was obviously happening at the time, and it seemed very appropriate, those kind of drunken, woozy beats for, those sort of opiatic beats. And so it was really like this movie and this opportunity was, it was like a little vehicle into our future. It was really great.
And you wrote "She Might Be Waking Up" for the movie?
Nathan Larson, the guitar player in Shudder to Think, wrote it for this. Yeah. Or he just wrote it. I don't even know like what the prompt was, but I remember going over to his apartment. He was like, "I've got this song," and it was like, "Oh my God, dude, it needs to be in this movie."
Yeah, it's a great song.
I mean, I'll just make one comment about it. Amy and I cut it, and then we tried to put music on it, and I sort of panicked, and I thought, "Oh shit, there's no music that like nothing works. This is like kind of a disaster."
We tried so many things, and it was
Yeah, and we didn't. So I never thought like, oh, this might be one of those movies where it's kind of just score. I always thought there was going to be, needle drops or whatever they called, and it just didn't work. So finally, this woman Tracy McKnight, who was our music supervisor, introduced us to Shudder to Think, and in they came with this sonic scape, this soundscape, and I was like, oh my God. It was sort of a thank God moment. And yeah, that was great. That really just
But
tied it up.
I remember when we first met, and Lisa had pretty serious doubts. We were still very much in rock mode, and we were kind of glammy and had a whole thing. And she was like, "Excuse me, what is this?" And then been pals ever since.
Yeah, I thought it was just like this band of really good-looking, hipster guys trying to like hustle me because they wanted to get into the film business. I said, what?
We wanted
Where's
to go
the
straight
proof?
to the
Where's
top,
the pudding?
so we went to Lisa Cholodenko.
But I was all that, but
97.
like, we'll just get in here.
Speaking of Amy and your collaboration with Lisa, you guys, I think, go way back to film school, right? Or to
assistant editorhood.
Yeah.
Wow.
Before, yeah.
We worked across the hall from each other.
Yes, we
on the
did.
Fox lot.
Wow. Okay.
I was like on a movie called Unlawful Entry, and you were like, was it Used People or yeah?
So we were both assistant editors. She was a first assistant editor, and I was
Yeah.
a second or third assistant editor.
You were second.
And we became friends. And then shortly thereafter, I moved to New York and started film school. And Amy was my editor on these films I made. Yeah, the shorts in film school. And then we went on, and this happened, and
Yeah, that.
she came to New York, and we cut it, and it was, it was a flow.
So at this point, you must have had kind of a shorthand in how you worked, or
Well, this was like, this was like the feature. This was the thing we talked about. This was the dream. And so it was kind of like, yeah, I knew how to work with Lisa, and it was just like I knew her, but like we didn't know kind of what we were doing sometimes. And it was just like I had worked on enough features as an assistant editor, and I had actually cut a couple features maybe before this, so I did have an idea of like what to do. But like when you're working with like I had read these scripts that Lisa had been writing of this movie for a long time, and so like, wow, here you are, and you're actually making it, and it was just, I don't know, it all came together, but it was.
But I have to say, when I watch this movie now, and I think things have changed a lot in 25 years. I don't know who we talked about this with. The pace of it, it's languid.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know that, like, I think
Yeah.
in modern cinema, there's more of a, like, people's attention spans are just different. And
But
so
it's
I
also
thought
100 minutes long, so it's not like.
yeah, but I think it's interesting because of the the budgetary things. Like we didn't have a ton of coverage, there wasn't a million ways to cut it, and I think it was like considered that way. That's
Yeah.
how I shot it because that's what it seemed like on the page and what it felt like when we watched it performed. But that required a certain pacing.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting to see it now, 25 years later, and think like, oh, yeah, that's kind of languid.
Yeah.
Would
But
that be a now movie?
But the
Who knows?
performances just absolutely rivet it. It's
Yeah.
just you can't stop being
You wouldn't
drawn
want to
in.
cut away.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was the thing. And I mean, some of it too, it's like, I've been told, like, it's such a beautiful, patiently edited movie. And I was like, well, we didn't have a lot of things to cut to, but like, all the time. It's, so it's like, yeah, like the actors were amazing, and we were thankful for their performances because there were a lot of times where we didn't have a lot of coverage, and that's just indie filmmaking. I still draw on those little things once in a while. It's like, well, I don't have it, but I can figure this out. It's like I have that in my bones. It's yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the casting of this film? I mean, the actors are all, as we have all acknowledged, are incredible.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Again, when it's an independent film, it's kind of a little bit ragtag how it comes together. We had another producer on the movie, Dolly Hall, and she had a relationship with Carrie Barden, who was a pretty prominent casting director in New York, lovely guy, and he kind of did a freebie for us. He generously donated his time and his castingness, and he found Rhoda Mitchell, and he showed me Rhoda Mitchell on a tape, and I was really taken with her face. I just thought she was really compelling, and I watched a tape, and I was like, yeah, I'd buy her, and I'd want to watch her. She's great eyes, and she's just compelling. And then the Lucy Berliner and Greta were funny casting because we had seen many people who became very noted, actors, and I was wringing my hands over many of them, like, I don't know, it doesn't feel like that. And we brought them back, and I was still wondering, and then I got, what was it, like a call. Ali Sheedy read the script. She's going to fly herself out here. She really wants to meet you. She really loves this, and she feels like she's that character. And I kind of buckled, and I was like, God, isn't that like, Brat Pack, Breakfast Club, like, oh, should I be doing that? And then she came out, and she read with Rada, and I was just like, there's just no question. Like, she's just that, she should be playing this. So then she was cast, and that was very unexpected for me. And I think she does an amazing performance. I'm always stunned by it. And so, look at me, like, whatever, pie on my face. And then we were trying to cast Greta, and again, I had other people that I was considering, but nobody felt, there was something nagging at me, like there was something that wasn't landing. So we had this emergency casting session because we were going into production like a week later. Yeah. So it was one of those like, better get somebody in there because the train's leaving. And Carrie brought Patty Clarkson in. I didn't know her. I think she was on a series or something at the time, or had been. And she did the audition. And I don't know if she did it with Allie. I think she did it with Allie. And I was cracking up, and I had not written this character to be so ironic and funny, and I was like, oh, thank God. Like, that's what this movie needs, and I didn't know that it needed it so much. And not only that, but her facility and her thing was kind of just perfect. So it was one of those situations that you pray for when you're making a film, that somebody's going to come in and nail it in just a radically unexpected and delightful way. And she was that. So it came together, but it's not like, one day in the office and we were all sewn up. I mean, it was
No, I think the
arduous.
3 leads were cast in the last few weeks. I mean, it was. I remember when the VHS tape of Rada came in, we already had our production office open, so it was late. But that is to say, we had no cast until we were in pre-production. It's insanity. I mean, maybe we had some of the secondary characters.
I think I had even arrived in New York, and Greta hadn't been cast, and I think it was literally the day I showed up, we're supposed to the editors here,
I remember that. I remember you walked in the office.
Yeah,
I do.
The true joys of indie filmmaking.
Go anyway, you could just go, okay, time's up. We're going to cast that person. But then when somebody comes in and it's just like the whole thing shifts in the right direction with something you didn't really realize that you were looking for, that's the magic moment.
But I think that really goes to freedom because, look, in any other production model, you would literally probably be casting for years because you're assembling the cast that's going to accommodate the needs of the financiers and who usually have incredibly poor taste, and it's an endless negotiation
No bitterness,
and
no
people
cynicism.
hopping in and out.
Yeah.
So it goes to the character of the film and the way it was actually cast. It was harrowing and terrifying, and I think if we knew more, we would never have been able to survive. But it actually says something about the filmmaking, that it had to be cast in that way as opposed to the typical way, which is so corrosive, destructive.
Yeah, and not creative. And
Not creative at all.
I think we can open it up to the audience.
Oh, yeah.
If you have a question, raise your hand. Right here in the middle. Please wait for the microphone. Somebody will bring you a microphone.
Hello. This is the first time I heard about this film or saw this film because it was 12 when I came out. And I lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and in a Christian family, so we definitely were not watching anything like this. But I love the movie. I was blown away by it. I'm in recovery. And I'm like, why don't they make movies like this anymore? So my question is, when is your next wonderful film coming out that is of this caliber? It just blew me away, and I'm like desperate and dying, and we need good films like this that like feed the soul and like really speak to the human experience. So when's the next one coming out?
Yeah, Lise.
Yeah, Lisa.
We all feel that way.
Love that question.
Soon. Soon.
Yeah, right.
Thank you for that.
You should also watch Lisa's other films too. So catch up.
I mean,
on
the reality is money. Like finding the money is calling it obscenely difficult is a tremendous understatement. Particularly when you pair it. I mean, even when we made The Kids Are All Right, it was roundly rejected. It was almost impossible to finance. Everybody saw this as a ridiculous film. Who wants to watch these older women in this kind of sexualized situation with kids? Like, who would want to watch that movie? But this really goes to it. It's just we live in a very broken world. So I so appreciate that question. Like, how do you? It's the goal of all of us on the stage to make films that are deeply humane and say something about the human condition. But I have to say, the industry militates against that. It's almost as if it's designed to prevent that from happening. I mean, not to be overly cynical, but that's what I've concluded after 30 years. So hopefully soon, but we're going to be going through the seats looking for change, just trying to see if we could.
another question. Yes.
Hi, I was in the that scene during that time period, and this feels like documentary filmmaking to me. It's a very autobiographical feel, similar to what you're talking about in the film, how you, the lead character talked about the photographs themselves. I really appreciated kind of having a big flashback to that time. Not a question, just a comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, it's very hard to see if there's any questions. There's one up here.
Oh. Should I? Oh, me? Okay. Thanks.
Oh, okay.
I'm back here, but
Okay, sure.
yeah. I'm just imagining your reunion right now and what it was like 25 years ago when you were making this and in film school and having such a great time, and as hard as it was. And I'm wondering if you could speak to, I mean, Columbia's no joke, so your own ambition at the time, given the statement on ambition in the film is so strong, and if there's a way you could speak to that.
Well, I kind of did before. I mean, I'm from humble beginnings, so I really wanted to go to film school because I felt like I was in California and I wanted to make films, but I didn't know how to write them. And I knew, like, it was just not going to happen to become a filmmaker in LA And there was a big sort of independent scene. You know, it was big, but small, but brief. And, you know, it was happening in New York, so I kind of had my radar on where it was happening and how it was happening. I guess this is around the time of like new queer cinema, and there was a lot of focus on Sundance, and it was just a good time to be making an independent film. And, you know, so I applied to film school. I got rejected by, you know, 2 of them, and one of them accepted me, and it was Columbia. So that's where I ended up. And like I said, you know, it was expensive to go to film school, and I knew that if I was going to sort of invest in it, in myself, I really had to take it seriously. So it kind of made me ambitious more out of fear than anything else. Like, I was really scared about coming home with my tail between my legs, I think. So I just got kind of obsessive and sort of hyper-focused, like, I got to do this. I'm not going to phone it in. I'm not going to make something phony. If anything's going to happen, it has to be like pure and true and like brave. Otherwise, it's just probably not going to happen. So that was kind of my mantra.
And a lot of us were in that place of just like, you know, I was an assistant editor. I wanted to be an editor. It's like you know, you had to have ambition to like talk to people who wanted to be filmmakers. It's like that's how I met Lisa. It's like, you know, a lot of us. It was just the passion and the drive to want to do it was in the 90s. It was like a big, you know, it was a thing. And I mean, it still is a thing, but
It was
at that time, it was a time.
it was a time, yeah.
Yeah, transitory. I mean, there was also a real community there in New York. I mean, probably numbered in the hundreds when it was so small.
You literally knew everyone, or
Yeah.
there was no IMDb. You had to pick up the phone. You had to actually call people and talk to them and either introduce yourself or convince them to have coffee with you or something. You really had to hit the pavement.
Yeah, or drop by the office.
Drop by the office.
Roam the halls.
An actual office.
That's right. No.
But for me, you know, just in terms of ambition, that time in New York was just a really good time, and I feel I was sort of blessed to be there then, coming up then, in that environment, meeting those particular people, including these particular people. So that was like a kismet moment for me in my life. It wasn't just, you know, pure ambition.
Had to get out of the valley.
You had a question here?
Hi, first of all, this is my favorite film of all time, and seeing it restored like this is absolutely incredible. This is the first film I saw where I saw myself as a queer woman on screen, not contextualized by homophobia and just gratuitous sexualization. And I'm curious, their representation has come some way, but Hollywood still doesn't really want to seem to uplift real queer female stories. So as a filmmaker myself, I'm curious what motivation you could give in an industry now that still doesn't want to seem to elevate these stories.
I mean, maybe other people could speak to this. For me, I felt like it was important to write a story that didn't rely on the gayness or the queerness, and that it had to stand alone. And of course, that's the fabric of it, but it is not the thing of it. And I felt that way also, like The Kids Are All Right. So those are the kinds of films like I really appreciate, you know, those kinds of queer films where you're like, wow, this is a good film and it stands. It doesn't even need to be per se about that, but it is kind of about that. And it's a tricky thing. I don't really know how to speak to that more than my own ambition with it. But I appreciate what you're saying about it, because I tend to not be attracted to films that are more in the trope of, you know, what we know we've seen, right? The victim or the hero or whatever. And more about like identity politics and stuff. So that hasn't really been my thing. So
I saw a question up here.
Thank you. This was also my first time seeing the film. I thought it was absolutely wonderful, and I know you said languid, but I just feel like I was captivated every single moment of everything that was on screen, so thank you. I wanted to ask just for each of you quickly about the industry. I know it can be very hard, and I'm sure there might have been times too when you thought about maybe scrapping this project or giving up on it, and I'd just love to hear from each of you, like maybe a moment in your careers that you've had where you thought maybe you were gonna give up or not do this anymore for yourself, and what kind of kept you going through, and maybe for you as
Every
well.
week.
Every day, every moment,
Yeah,
great.
it's usually between the hours of
give us
9
the
a.m. and
20
like 10
okay,
a.m.
great, good to know, so.
Like 7 times.
I don't think
What
you want to
day
hear
is
the
it?
answer.
Those aren't quick answers.
The one thing I would offer, I mean, in a way, in the most kind of naive and Pollyannish way, if it's something you love and you have to do it, then you have to do it and do it with love. There's no rational reason to engage in filmmaking. Period. Particularly if you actually are serious about cinema. If you think of it as product or some crap that's streaming on the TV, that's a different thing. That could be a job. But if you're serious about cinema, then the only reason to do it is precisely because you can do absolutely nothing else. Because it's just a difficult, heartbreaking, slog. But then when you get it right, it could be like the most ecstatic and beautiful experience of your life. So it's that, you.
And it's still rewarding 25
Yeah.
years, 28 years later.
And you can rest on your laurels.
Oh, that's
You
what
know,
we're doing
it's
up
like,
here.
yeah, my career has been like this, and you ride that roller coaster, and it's like I love what I do, and that's just what keeps me going. And it's I got good at it. I like what I do, but there are times where you're just like, fuck, this sucks, But I just never stopped pursuing it, and don't stop pursuing it.
Yeah,
If
I
it's
think
what you
that
love, yeah.
No.
the perseverance piece, not just in terms of the industry. I mean, obviously within the industry, but more like within oneself internally. There are so many times a year, a month, a day, where it's like, fuck this, I'm done. Like, this is it. And then, I feel like making a commitment to oneself to persevere over the voice is pretty big. And then also, if you're fortunate enough to fall in with angels, there's a magnetism that when that starts happening, like more angels come.
I mean, I think for me, and this is honest, I don't know, like, I don't feel like I have that many talents, that there were other things that I could really do. And there was times where I was like, this is really frightening, because I don't know if I can make it in this business, and I don't know if I can stomach this business, but I don't know what I could do. So, yeah, sometimes it comes down to that. It was very stark when I realized that was my truth. But yeah, I think you just keep going, and hopefully you have people around you that kind of can propel you and encourage you and bolster you when it's really rough. And I think for me, the hardest part of it is that you're your own, like for me, I generate my own stuff typically. And that's really hard, to be like your own generator, because there are times, many times in the last 25 years that I have felt, fallow or whatever it's called. And it's like, well, now how am I going to pay the bills? I don't have anything to say. So it's a trippy thing. Yeah, you hear a lot about people that, I've heard during the strike, I heard a lot of people talking on these shows about like, yeah, the only way you can be in this business anymore is if you're independently wealthy, and that like there's no room for people to make independent film anymore. I don't think that that's true. I just think that it does take a kind of perseverance and a willingness to work really hard to create something that, is worth being made. And yeah, that's my 2 cents. Does anybody else want to add?
I think we have to start wrapping things up, but I wanted to just have you talk a bit about the project of restoring the film. And it's so amazing to see the film and to know that future generations or future audiences will be able to enjoy this film. And I know it was a lot of work, and that Marcus, who was part of that, and May and John were also.
I mean, I'll just say briefly, and then I'll hand it off to Jeff. When the film, it was an extraordinary thing and kind of mind-blowing. At 25 years, we had a copyright with then October Films, who then ultimately became Universal. That was the parent company, and the contract we had when we sold it was for 25 years, and then that copyright would revert back to us. And so it was like in a blink of an eye, sort of. All of a sudden, I said to Jeff, that copyright's coming back to us, right? And then you took it over from there.
Yeah, it's it's interesting. We had 2 screenings that were both wonderful and also just like very anxiety provoking. So we had one at SVA. It was for maybe the 20th year anniversary, and then we had the other one at Sundance. And both of them loved the film, could barely discern what people were saying. The prints that were nobody was making new prints, of course, because that's very expensive, and they were in poor shape. The sound mix, everything was done on such a shoestring that the sound was recorded well, but by the time we got to mixing it, and then we made an optical track negative with ultra stereo, which only connoisseurs of very low budget films even know what that is. It's basically like if you don't have the money for Dolby, you go to ultra stereo, which was like some guy like around the corner, with, yeah, ultra stereo. And it wasn't
It had
stereo.
a great logo, though.
It was like minimal mono. And that's what we had to live with. And so I always had my eye on, we have to, when we get those rights back, we have to do something. And Lisa was also very motivating in that way. And fortunately, on the picture side, it was pretty straightforward. We had our intact 35 millimeter negative, which cost us about 50% of the budget to make that, just the film itself. And then we had pennies to pay for everything else. And then the sound was a much more arduous thing because we were in this period of transition where all the elements were on sort of faulty digital media that we had to put together, and just finding some place to transfer it was a whole task in itself. And then, of course, when we got it, there's all these succession of errors. But when we were able to line all the different elements up, we managed to be able to run the gauntlet and avoid all those errors. And then, of course, with the mixing technology we have now, it's a completely different ballgame. So we were able to, when you watch it, it's like, oh, this is the same film. If you A/B the sound, it's like, oh my God, this is dramatic. And because when we were in the studio doing it, just what we had to, in the original film, crush so much of the dialogue to compress it in order to just take the noise out of it. And I think that's where a lot of the subtleties are coming through. So it's like, it's the film, but we were looking and listening to it through with cotton in our ears and Vaseline on the lens, and we were just cleaned it all off, and now we're able to present it. So it's, I don't know, I think really gratifying.
How did tell me, because I think you and Marcus pulled everybody together, and truthfully, I don't really know how that works. Was it just phone calls, who wants to participate?
Marcus was the mastermind behind the organizational effort, and then he just put me to work and treated me like his assistant. I was happy to do it, Marcus. I'm picking up your laundry later, just please don't be upset. I was busy tonight.
I do want to swing back to sound a little bit because I thought it was amazing. It was Red Hook was a company, this guy, Tom Effinger, who used to be Dig It Audio, who did the original mix.
Yeah.
But I am curious because we recorded on DAT, we weren't on Nagra, we had made that advance. But so were there dropouts when you say you were maneuvering around?
Yeah, so basically we had there's a whole backstory to this, but we had two sets of elements. We had D88s, which is 8-track digital audio recorded on high-8 videotape, and that was very au courant in 1997.
I forgot.
And we had 40 tracks of that, which were from the sound edit.
Okay.
So that's sort of the basic thing, completely unmixed, but everything's lined up in the proper places, unmixed, EQ'd, and all the rest. And then we had the stems from the mix that we did at Sound One, but the stems themselves were actually poorly made because the way I don't want to get into technical, but the way they were allocated, there was only 16 tracks of them, which is really not enough to create the full set of stems, and those had dropouts. And then we also had dropouts on the other masters, but by combining them all together, we were able to navigate around it. And then, of course, we used, like, for so much of the dialogue, we just said, we're going to start over, because this dialogue, we essentially, in order to save it, we had to sort of throttle it in the original mix. And one thing we did in the mix, I don't know if you remember, so we had a big mixing board, the classic mixing board, which is a real pain in the ass to mix on. 'Cause usually you'd have 3 people there, and that's how you did a film mix, but we couldn't afford 3 people, so it was one person trying to do it, and it's Damien, but it was also Fernandez, who went on to be a big mixer. But for instance, we had this one fader, and what's on this fader is just kind of air, it's noise. So it's like, this doesn't sound right. We'll just keep cranking this up. So it's like, shh.
A jet throttle.
Just to like get all like the bumps and the pops, but that was like the reality. And it's like, we have 4 days. We have to just fly. And in fact, part of that is, and this is where your assistant editing experience came, we had to go and, with the print, remember we went to the little edit room and Sound One with the print to figure out the LFOA, so you were like at the rewinds, running the film down.
Really?
Yeah. So it was all very fun and very homemade. Yeah, we forget these moments, yeah.
I mean, it was great, the sound. I mean, there were so many places, like even in the beginning with Sid's, like putting the prints into the envelope. I was like, I've never heard that.
No.
Do we not have Foley artists on this or
No.
something?
I mean,
It was great.
I did add a little bit of Foley in. I couldn't help myself.
Well,
But a
that's
lot
right,
of it
'cause
was
we did it
there.
the first time.
A lot of it was there, and we just couldn't hear it.
Right.
It just wasn't.
Right.
The mix was just too convoluted, and of course, it was very
Compressed.
flat. Now it's much wider, and I don't know. I don't mean to be obsessive about it, but
It's great. I like your obsession. Good.
And so the film is going to be re-released.
yes.
Tell your friends to see the film. When is this happening, Marcus? Spring 2025.
Tell your
Exciting.
friends.
Yes.
The
I want to
word out.
thank you all for being here and answering these great questions and from the audience. And, congratulations again. It's such a wonderful thing
Thank you
to
so
see
much for
highlighted.
coming.
Thank
It's a lot
you.
for me.
Thank you for coming. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for coming.